My name is Ratchel. Right now, I live in a small room-sized annex attached to my in-laws' house. My husband, Stefan, lives in the main house with his parents, while I stay alone in the annex. This annex wasn't always a living space. It was originally a small building Stefan's grandfather built as a personal project, a quiet spot just for himself. Over time, I worked hard to turn it into something livable. I cleaned it, fixed it up, added furniture, and made it feel like a home. Stefan and I used to live in a normal apartment, just the two of us. We stayed there for 3 years after getting married. Things were okay until one day, Stefan's parents, who clearly adore him, told us they wanted to live with him. Stefan didn't even hesitate, he agreed right away. He said he wanted to be close to his parents too. They all hugged and cried, and I stood there, shocked at how emotional and quick it all was. I met Stefan at work. He was actually my junior when he joined our company midway through his career. After dating for 3 years, we got married. Even during those dating years, Stefan still lived at his parents' house. Looking back, I think that long stay made it harder for both him and his parents to let go. They missed each other a lot. Stefan had been spoiled at home. He had never done any cleaning or cooking. After we got married, I asked if we could share house chores, but he didn't like the idea. He simply said, "I've never done housework before." That was when I realized something troubling. He never planned to help. Whenever I brought up chores, Stefan would pretend to be interested for a minute, then back away and say, "This isn't for me. You're better at this, Ratchel, just keep doing it." Both of us had jobs, but I was actually in a higher position at work. I thought that meant he'd be more open to helping at home, but getting him to help took so much energy and time that it was easier to just do everything myself. I got used to carrying the load alone. Then, I started working remotely. Suddenly, I was at home every day. At first, Stefan seemed okay with it. He stopped questioning my routine, or so I thought, but later, I realized he didn't really understand what working from home meant. A few years into remote work, his parents came to visit us and announced they wanted to live with Stefan. That visit ended in emotional hugs and tears again, and just like that, we were planning to move into his parents' home. From then on, Stefan always chose places close to his parents, whether it was where we lived or where he worked. My remote job meant I could work from anywhere, but his decisions kept forcing us to move and even leave jobs. When we finally moved into his parents' house, his mother smiled at me and said, "Thank you for taking care of Stefan all this time. From now on, I'll take care of Stefan. Ratchel, please take care of everything else." At first, I thought she meant I wouldn't have to do Stefan's laundry or cook for him anymore, but I was wrong. She only meant that she would pamper Stefan even more. She made his favorite meals, did his laundry separately, polished his shoes, and bought things just for him. Meanwhile, all the other chores, cooking for the rest of the family, cleaning, laundry, dishes, everything else became my responsibility. Even though I still had a full-time remote job, I was now expected to run the entire household. It was exhausting. Stefan and his parents were happy, but I felt overwhelmed and unimportant. No one seemed to care how tired I was. One day, while I was cleaning, my father-in-law quietly asked me if I could give some money to help with the household bills. I asked him why he wasn't asking Stefan. He said it was too difficult to ask Stefan because he had worked so hard. Stefan and I had always agreed to share expenses, like rent and groceries, but even back when we went shopping, Stefan always tried to make me pay for everything: random snacks, alcohol, clothes, things he didn't even need. If I said no, he'd sulk like a child and call me stingy. Even with all that, I told myself it was fine, at least he stayed out of my way during the day. But that changed after we moved in with his parents. His mother kept interrupting me while I worked. She'd burst into my room, tug on my clothes, and insist I do chores. Even though I was clearly busy with work, I couldn't focus anymore. I talked to Stefan about it, expecting him to defend his mother, but he actually listened. He said he'd speak with her, and I hoped that meant things would improve. But what he did instead was quietly push me out of the main house. He said I could use the annex, a small separate building that wasn't being used. When I joked and asked if I could rebuild the place entirely, Stefan said, "Sure, do whatever you want, you can even build a new house." So I took him seriously. I started cleaning, painting, changing the wallpaper, turning the little hut into a livable space that felt like mine. But during the entire renovation, Stefan never visited. I started to understand that he never planned to live there with me. That was when I truly realized, in this house, I was the outsider. It didn't matter that I was his wife. When the family went out to eat or had a barbecue, they didn't invite me. If I had to work late and missed dinner, they didn't save me anything. It was clear that these choices, where we lived, how we lived, were not made for both of us. They were made for Stefan and his parents, and slowly, I was being left behind. After Stefan told me I could do whatever I wanted with the hut, I really took that freedom seriously. I started fixing it up, doing small DIY projects, putting in new shelves, and decorating the space to fit my own style. Slowly, I turned it into a place that felt like home, my own little corner. What surprised me, though, was that neither Stefan nor his parents ever came to see it, not once. Even though they must have noticed the changes I was making, they didn't ask questions or show any interest. It felt like I had been quietly pushed out of their world. I didn't feel like part of their family anymore, and they clearly didn't care what I was doing. But living away from the main house, without Stefan's mother always watching over me, gave me something I hadn't felt in a long time: peace. It was almost like living alone again. I started to enjoy it. I didn't have to deal with constant interruptions. I felt free to work, think, and just breathe. I added locks and security features to the hut so no one could come in without my permission, not Stefan, not his parents. For the first time in a while, I felt in control. And then I started wondering, maybe this new setup wasn't so bad after all. But it turns out my mother-in-law didn't like that I was getting comfortable. Maybe she realized I was no longer bothered by her or her behavior. That seemed to bother her even more. She started doing small, petty things to get on my nerves. For example, instead of putting trash at the proper collection spot on garbage day, she began leaving it right outside my cabin. Some days, she would throw garden parties or barbecues and never invite me. The smell of grilled meat would float through the air and into my space, clearly on purpose, but all I could do was laugh. Her efforts to upset me were so obvious and childish, it almost became funny. Then one day, she called me to the main house, saying there were some leftover meat and potatoes. I had a feeling there was more to it, but I went anyway. When I got there, only she was home. She sat me down and slid a single sheet of paper across the table, a divorce paper. That was her real reason for calling me. She didn't want to feed me, she wanted me gone. She didn't yell, she didn't argue, she simply looked at me with a smug smile and said, "Isn't it about time you gave up? There's no reason for you and Stefan to stay married anymore. Get out, you freeloading unemployed woman." Her words stung, but strangely, they also woke something up inside me. I wasn't sad or angry, I felt relieved, excited, even. I looked at her and said, "Thank you, I'm going to the city court right now to file this." I meant it. I think she was shocked. She probably expected me to cry or beg, but I didn't. I signed the paper and headed straight to the court to make it official. Afterward, I returned to the main house and told her it was done. We were divorced. I told her I would leave the hut just as it was. She could tear it down or keep it, whatever she wanted. I was moving out, and I had no regrets. Even she seemed surprised by how calmly I handled it. She even said goodbye and wished me luck. The day I moved out, Stefan and his father suddenly started acting like they cared. "Are you really going?" they asked. "What will we do without Ratchel?" I smiled and thanked them for letting me use the cabin, but I explained that the marriage was over and it was time for me to start a new chapter. I packed my things and left. I moved into a luxury apartment I had been planning to get for a while. I was finally free. A few days later, I got a phone call from my mother-in-law. Her voice was awkward, almost nervous. "Ratchel," she said, "I need to ask you something." I laughed and asked, "What's up? How's the cabin I was using?" She hesitated for a moment, then brought up money. She said Stefan told her I had been giving his father $33,000 a month. I told her it was true. Then I reminded her, gently, that I wasn't an unemployed freeloader like she used to say. She sounded shocked. "I thought you quit your job." "No," I replied. "I left the company to become president of a new one. I work remotely now." She couldn't believe it, and honestly, I wasn't surprised she didn't know. Even Stefan didn't seem to know or care what I did for a living. From the beginning, he never really treated me like an equal partner or even like a wife. Then she asked how much I made, including my side job. I shrugged and said, "Around $2 million. Okay, I might have exaggerated a little, but explaining the real number would have been a hassle. Then she asked the real question. "Can you lend us some money?" She said, "Actually, Father lost his job a while ago. He didn't tell anyone. We've been getting by with the $3,000 you were giving us." And suddenly, everything made sense. That speech my father-in-law gave me months ago, about not wanting to bother Stefan for money, was just an act. He had no problem asking me, though. He probably figured I had money because of my job title, and I guess, in the end, I had been quietly covering their expenses without knowing the full truth. Still, I didn't mind. At least I had peace and quiet while living in the hut. But now that I was officially divorced, I told her, "I'm no longer part of your family." Right away, she said, "That's not true. To me and Stefan, you're still family. Come back to us." I didn't even hesitate. I said no. I knew what would happen if I went back. I'd be used all over again. There was nothing left between me and Stefan. We were strangers now, and honestly, it felt strange and uncomfortable that they still called me family after pushing me out. Now, I live alone. It's not so different from when I was married, except back then I wasn't spending money on myself, and I was giving $3,000 a month to people who didn't value me. I like this life better. So I said goodbye and hung up the phone without looking back. That phone call must have been their last desperate attempt to get help. The truth is, Stefan never had a strong work ethic. He often gave up easily, saying, "I can't do it," and passing his tasks on to others, both at home and at work. Because of that, he never got promoted. His salary stayed the same. With his dad unemployed and his mom never having worked, they couldn't afford the big family house anymore. They had to sell it. Now, the three of them live together in the tiny hut I renovated. It's fine for one person, but for 3 adults, it must be cramped and uncomfortable. As for me, I haven't thought about them since. I'm living peacefully, and finally, truly free.